But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. It feels alright.
Hi, welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is Eddie Howe's press conference review for the Everton game, which takes place at St James's Park, 7:30 on Wednesday night. And as always, a half an hour press conference from Eddie in front of the local press and national press, and confirmation that Isak will be out until after the World Cup. As confirmed today, he had a slight injury when he joined the club, and it looks as if that injury has been aggravated while he was on international duty with Sweden. It sounds like a devastating blow, and of course it is, but it's 5 games. That's the way I look at it. I would take that as a positive, and Eddie Howe certainly did as well. The break, if you're looking for positives, will help his recovery, and it means that when Newcastle and the rest of the Premier League return on Boxing Day, that Isak hopefully will be fit and raring to go. As for other players, well, ASM, of course, is the other one which everyone was keen to know more on. He won't be available for the Everton game or the Tottenham game, but there is chances that ASM will pull on a black and white shirt again before the World Cup kicks off again. There's only 5 games now before the break. One of those, of course, is a cup game against Crystal Palace in November. But yeah, ASM is still struggling with the hamstring injury, and they are treating it very, very carefully. Fabian Schär, of course, went off at Old Trafford at the weekend. He has been nursing a foot injury for a while, according to Eddie Howe, and although he has been managing that for best part of the season, it's reared its head again at Old Trafford. He was taken off as a precaution, but he has been training and he is expected to be okay for tomorrow. John Joe Shelby, in Eddie Howe's words today, will only enter the pitch in an emergency. He is still recovering, still on course with his recovery, but I don't really think they want to take a risk with him if they don't have to. So only entering the pitch in an emergency tells you where you're at with Shelby, but they're delighted with his return, and you would imagine that we might see something of him towards those latter games before the World Cup kicks off. Carl Darlow also got a mention today in dispatches. He's now training on grass, and he is in the latter stages of recovery. Of course, we're not in a massive rush to get him back. We do have Carey as backup at this moment in time, but he is progressing nicely, said Eddie Howe today. The way assessing Trippier and Bruno, didn't really give too much more away on that. Obviously, Bruno went off, but he did point out that essentially, with regards to injuries and assessment, it's a day-to-day operation. They look at things, they check the players, they speak to the players, and obviously the experts at the club assess them, but not led to believe that there's any issues with Trippier or Bruno for tomorrow night, and both should be fit to play. He was asked a question about Ryan Fraser, who, of course, featured quite heavily at the start of the season. He said he did link up well with ASM, but he said that he's competing now against other players, and when he gets in the team, if he gets in the team, he needs to take his chance to shine. The defensive record, of course, we've discussed it on UFC Matters over the last 48 hours. Newcastle have the best defensive record in the Premier League. Did you ever think we'd be saying that? He just said, look, we can't take this for granted. We can't rest on our laurels. And he pointed out that Newcastle defend as a team. He didn't want to heap praise on the back four as a whole. He wanted to praise the team in general. He said, "Look, we defend from the front, and it's a team effort." So he was pleased, and he said overall that the performances have pleased him the most. He's been very proud of the effort and the delivery by the team in almost all of the games this season. When asked about the Everton game in particular, he was basically saying that he loves nighttime games at St James's Park. He doesn't know why, he can't put a finger on it, but he just feels it's the atmosphere, it's under the lights, and that there's a different type of aggression from the fans, which pushes the team on. And it's the atmosphere, I guess, that that has often been talked about over the many years that we have existed as a football club. The crowd has been called the 12th man. He was asked about unsung heroes at the club, and he mentioned Gillespie, for instance. Mark Gillespie, of course, somebody who clearly has a big influence in the dressing room. He's He's a local lad. He wants to see things go well for the team, and he's clearly one of those unsung heroes. Craig Hope from the Daily Mail asked him about the training. Was that perchance one of the reasons why we're seeing a few of these muscle injuries, etc.? He said no. It's just par for the course during an average football season. And yes, ceilings. Have we ever focused on ceilings as much as we have since Jurgen Klopp opened his turkey teeth this weekend? He said no, there's no ceiling to our ambition. But he says, reality, there is a ceiling with financial fair play. He said, look at us at the moment. He says, we're training at a training ground that's been really developed. And financial fair play for Newcastle United, as every other club, has to be adhered to. And everyone has to be careful with comments and opinions. So I think when, maybe somebody gets asked something and they get taken out of context, I think that's what he was referring to there. He also answered a question about, other clubs' fans saying that Newcastle are negative and defensive, and other managers potentially coming out with that, pundits saying that. And he says, we aren't worried what people think about us. We just want to turn up, compete and win. Also, quizzed about him not being very good as a defensive coach, which was a story, of course, that went round. Fans have talked about it since Eddie came into St James's Park. He said nobody likes criticism about themselves, did he? He said, I didn't like that. He says, and I'm always looking to improve myself. And he said, you've got to be self-critical, and he's no different. And from his perspective, he just said that he did go away and into the wilderness and have a good long think about things that he'd done. And he said he hasn't changed his methods drastically. He's changed things. He's tinkered with things. But he said ultimately for him, and again, it points back to the whole defensive record thing. He said that the players deserve the credit. And again, he emphasised that it's not just the back four, but it's the team as well. So overall, as usual, a great press conference from Eddie Howe. I love listening to him, and that's why we've decided to do these little podcasts. But hopefully that makes it easy for you to understand what is going on. Enjoy the game, and we will be back tomorrow with those were the days, because obviously Newcastle play Everton, so I'm not sure we'll manage to get a live show in, but certainly those were the days. We'll be back with George Mitchell. Thanks for listening, guys and girls. Take care.